Hi everyone, my name is Lena. My wedding day was supposed to be the happiest day of my life. Instead, it became the day I finally saw them for what they truly were. It started with the reception. Music, champagne, laughter, the usual wedding buzz. My husband, Ben, was by my side, smiling at me like I was the only woman in the room. And for a moment I believed it. Until my dad walked up, a grin plastered across his face. I had no idea it would all fall apart in the next few seconds. With a flourish, he reached into his pocket, pulled out a small bag and shook it over me. Glitter. Gold glitter. It sparkled in the light, swirling around my face, landing in my hair and dress. "Now you look expensive for once," he shouted, laughing loudly as though this was a compliment. I froze. The room quieted, but only for a moment. Everyone stared. Some laughed. Some whispered. My mom gasped, but then to my surprise she pulled me into a hug, whispering, "It's just a joke, sweetheart." A joke. That's what they always said, wasn't it? I stood there, frozen as they laughed. And all I could think was, I've spent my whole life trying to be enough for them, but all they ever saw was the image they wanted to create. No one saw the little girl who cried in her room, begging for attention, for validation, for something that felt like love. That night, as we retired to the hotel room, I took a deep breath. Ben was already asleep, exhausted from the festivities. But I wasn't tired. I walked over to the desk and took out my phone, the one I'd been avoiding all day. I tapped the family account, my fingers steady. I didn't need to think twice. Blocked. I froze every card I funded. Every line of credit they'd ever used. Tomorrow they'd feel it. The next morning I woke to an email notification. My mom's voice broke through the house, her call shrill. "Lena, what did you do?" "They've declined payment for her tuition. The college, they're withdrawing her enrollment." My heart didn't skip a beat. I stayed silent and I finally let the silence speak. My mom's voice cracked through the phone again, a desperation I hadn't heard in years. "Lena, please. This is serious. Your sister's college. Her future." But it wasn't just her future that was at stake. It was everything I'd put on hold, everything I had put on hold, just to make sure they could stay comfortable in their lifestyle. Lifestyle. That's what my dad always called it. His world of appearance and status. The world where no one asked how we were doing but just assumed we were fine. The world where nothing was ever enough unless it looked impressive to others. I didn't take the call back. I didn't need to. Instead, I sat there in the quiet of our hotel room, staring at the phone, feeling the weight of their mistakes heavy on me. It was always the same. A slight misunderstanding of boundaries, a twisted game of guilt and pressure. I didn't speak. I didn't need to. They'd made their choice long ago. And now so had I. The next few hours were filled with calls, endless, panicked voicemails from my mom, trying to reason, to explain, to make me understand the severity of what had just happened. But I had no intention of understanding. I'd spent years trying to earn their approval. Years spent working for their image, building their expectations. Years spent pouring myself into their approval like it was the only thing that mattered. And now, for the first time, I didn't feel the weight. I wasn't guilty. I was just free. I closed my eyes, letting that feeling wash over me. It felt like breathing again after holding your breath for years. Felt like choosing me. But then the knock came. The door swung open. Ben stood in the doorway, concern in his eyes. "Lena." His voice was soft, the quiet question that made my chest tighten. He hadn't been a part of the mess, but he'd been watching, standing by, hoping I'd come to a decision. I didn't have to say a word. He walked in, sat next to me and just held my hand. No words. No questions. Just silence. And for the first time I knew I wasn't alone in this. Not anymore. I woke up the next morning to a flood of notifications. Emails. Voicemails. Texts. But there was one that stood out. From my mom, of course. Her message, sent at 3 a.m., began with, "Lena, please don't do this. You can't just walk away from family. This is hurting everyone." I almost laughed at the irony of it. My whole life had been spent trying to walk toward them, trying to fix things, trying to earn their attention, their approval. And now, when I finally stopped, I was the one hurting them? I didn't respond. I didn't need to. Instead, I went about the day like everything had already changed, because, in a way, it had. I wasn't angry. I wasn't sad. I was just tired. Tired of playing the game. Tired of letting them control the narrative. Ben was quiet too. He hadn't pressured me to make a decision, hadn't asked for an explanation. He just stood by me like he always had. And for once, it felt like the weight I had been carrying for so long didn't belong to me anymore. The phone rang again, this time it was Dad. I stared at the screen. 1 ring. 2. 3. I took a deep breath. I didn't pick up. His call went straight to voicemail and I didn't feel the usual panic. The need to explain, to fix things, to somehow make it right. What I had done wasn't about punishing them. It wasn't about revenge. It was about taking back my space. Taking back my peace. The next few hours passed quietly. I spent time with Ben, let the weight of everything settle. And just before dinner I finally looked through the messages. Mom had left a text. "Lena, your sister doesn't deserve this. We're family and we need to work this out. Please." I read it once. Twice. And then for the first time I felt no rush to respond. This wasn't about fixing. This was about choosing what mattered. I closed the phone and turned to Ben. "Tomorrow," I said quietly, "I'm going to end this. I'm going to make it clear." He squeezed my hand and for once I didn't feel the old fear of rejection. I felt ready. The next morning I woke up with a strange sense of calm. Like the world was still waiting for me to make the next move, and I was finally ready to do it. I went through my usual routine, but today felt different. There was no rush, no underlying tension. I wasn't gearing up for another argument or another round of guilt. Today I was choosing peace. At breakfast, Ben sat across from me, his quiet strength a steady reminder of what I had, what I'd always had. I didn't need to prove anything anymore. I didn't need their approval. I just needed me. And him. And the family I was starting to build. I took a deep breath, put my phone on the table and hit send. "Mom, Dad, I'm done with this cycle. I've done everything for you and it was never enough. I won't keep paying for your comfort at the expense of my own peace. I've learned my worth and it doesn't come with conditions. You'll hear from me when I'm ready and it won't be because you need something." I stared at the screen for a moment, knowing that sending this would change everything. But for the first time in my life I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Freedom. Ben read the message over my shoulder, his hand gently covering mine. "You're doing the right thing," he said softly. I nodded, the weight of years of expectations lifting off my shoulders. "You're right," I said quietly. "I can't keep pretending it doesn't hurt. And I'm done apologizing for wanting to be seen." By mid-afternoon the calls came in. That every single relative. But today I didn't pick up. Today I was teaching myself something that they had never been able to. How to say no. The messages came in fast, full of guilt, full of urgency. But I stayed still, knowing that none of it would move me. I could feel the shift in the air. My boundaries firm, unyielding. This time I wouldn't let them define me. I wouldn't let their chaos infect my peace. And when my phone buzzed again, I knew it wasn't just about money or them needing me. It was about their desperation to keep the control they once had. But it wasn't mine to give anymore. The following days felt like walking through a fog. A quiet, steady fog. I wasn't angry. I wasn't sad. I was just still. The calls kept coming. From my mom. From my dad. From every family member who thought they had a right to be part of my life whenever they wanted something. Each call went unanswered. Each message ignored. I knew it would only be a matter of time before they started getting creative. And sure enough, the next voicemail I received was from my sister. "Lena, please pick up. I don't understand. Mom and Dad are going crazy over this. They don't see how much they've hurt you. I know they've made mistakes, but you're breaking them. You're breaking the family." I didn't respond. I couldn't. Because she was right, but so was I. They had broken the family long before I ever decided to step away. And now they were desperate to keep me in the same cycle of need and neglect. But I was done. Ben and I spent the weekend together, disconnected from everything else. We talked, we laughed, we even cried. For once I felt like I had control. Not of them, but of me. Of my decisions. Of what I was willing to accept. And then, on Monday morning, I sat in front of my computer, staring at the screen for a moment before typing the most honest email I had ever written. "I've spent my whole life chasing after something that was never going to be mine. But I can't keep allowing you to think that I exist for your convenience. I'm not your aim. I'm not your emotional cushion. I am a person. I have a life. And it's no longer for you to take. I'm done fixing what was never my fault. I'm done being the family that you only want when you need something. When I'm ready, I will contact you. But it will be on my terms." I clicked send. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel the need to justify it. I felt peace. And by the time the afternoon came, the call I had been waiting for, the one that would show me everything I needed to see, finally came through. It was from my mom. But this time I answered. When I picked up the phone, I didn't feel the usual rush of anxiety. I didn't brace myself for the guilt trip or the tears or the angry demands. I just let it ring through to silence. Lena, my mom's voice came through, shaky but controlled, as if she had rehearsed what she was going to say. What the hell are you doing? She started, a question laced with frustration. I let the silence sit for a moment. I wasn't going to respond the way I always did, explaining myself, trying to fix things, taking on their anger. This time I was in control. I'm choosing myself, I said quietly. And I'm not apologizing for it. There was a long pause. I could hear the shallow breaths on the other end. He was still processing. Still grasping at whatever version of reality she could hold on to. I never thought you would do this, she whispered, her voice cracking just slightly. I felt the weight of that statement, the betrayal she was trying to force onto me. But I didn't react. I simply stayed quiet. I've given you everything, Lena. You think this is easy for me? She continued, a little more frantic now. We've been through so much. Don't I deserve some support? I closed my eyes, feeling that old sting of guilt rise in my chest. But it wasn't the kind that broke me anymore. It was the kind that told me I was doing the right thing. You're right, I said. You deserve support. But not from me anymore. Not at the cost of my peace. Not when it's always been about what you need and never about what I've needed. There was another pause, longer this time. Then, almost too soft to hear, you're breaking my heart. I let her words hang there, the weight of them, because I knew they weren't true. It wasn't my heart that was breaking. It was hers. No, Mom, I said with calm clarity. You broke it a long time ago. And I hung up. The feeling that settled in me was nothing like anger. It wasn't victory. It was peace. I walked to the window, watched the sunset, and realized for the first time, I wasn't running from them anymore. I was running toward something I had never known I deserved. The next few days were like a storm hovering overhead, dark clouds threatening but never quite breaking. The calls stopped for a while, but the messages came flooding in. Voicemails, texts, social media tags, passive-aggressive posts about family and loyalty that I could feel across the digital space. I didn't respond. I didn't even acknowledge them. I was done playing by their rules. It wasn't about revenge, but it felt like one. For years, I had been conditioned to believe that without them I wouldn't be whole. That without their approval I wasn't worthy. But the reality hit me, and it hit hard. I was whole. I was worthy. I had been all along. That Saturday I was sitting on the couch, my legs tucked under me as I flipped through a business proposal when my phone rang. It was Ben. I think it's time to check your voicemail, he said, voice tight but holding a hint of amusement. I haven't heard from them in days, I replied, scrolling through emails. They've probably moved on. But Ben didn't let it go. Trust me. You should listen. I clicked on the voicemail from Dad. His voice was raw, tinged with frustration, but something else. Something I hadn't heard from him in years. Remorse. Lena, I know I don't have the right to ask, but I want to fix this. I know I can't take back the years. I don't know how to be the father you needed, but I want to try. Please, just, let's talk. I'll come to you. I'll do whatever it takes. For a moment I felt a flicker of something. Guilt? Hope? But it passed quickly, just like it always did. Because this wasn't about my need for him anymore. It was about his need for me. I deleted the voicemail without a second thought. Ben walked into the room, eyes full of understanding. I looked up at him, a small smile forming. I'm not their fix, I said quietly, and I'm not their excuse either. He nodded, his hand resting on my shoulder. Exactly. You're not. The storm wasn't over, but the power to endure it no longer lay in their hands. The days after the voicemail from Dad were quiet, almost eerily so. I didn't hear from anyone. Not even a follow-up text. It was like the world had moved on, and I had finally learned how to stop chasing after the things that never truly belonged to me. It wasn't until the next weekend that I got the call. This time it wasn't my mom or my dad. It was my sister. I braced myself, but when I picked up, her voice was different. It wasn't frantic. It wasn't angry. It was soft. Lena, I think I understand now. I think I see what you've been trying to say. I didn't respond right away. I just listened. For the first time, she wasn't trying to defend our parents. She wasn't placing the blame on me for things I didn't cause. She was hearing me. I think they finally get it too, she continued, though her voice wavered. We don't have to do things their way. We don't have to keep pretending everything is fine when it's not. I smiled, a feeling of something like healing sweeping over me. I'm glad you understand. I'm sorry, she whispered, for all the times I didn't see it. I held my breath for a second, letting the weight of it sink in. He saw it. He finally saw it. We talked for a while longer, not about the past but about the future. About what I was building, not for them but for me, for my daughter. The life that wasn't shaped by their approval, but by the people who truly loved us. When I hung up, I didn't feel the old bitterness, the old need to explain or defend myself. I felt a quiet strength. The kind that comes from knowing that the people who really matter, the ones who truly see you, are still there. I turned to Ben, who was standing in the doorway waiting. He smiled at me and I felt a sense of calm settle over me, deeper than I'd ever known. Are you ready? He asked softly. I nodded. Ready for what? For us, he said, holding out his hand. For the life we're making. Together. I took his hand. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't running away from something. I was running toward everything that mattered. And that was enough.